Hi, it's Darren from SimNation again. Wanted to do a video on how do you know who to scout within the context of the draft within Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2023 from Wolverine Studios. In real life, the NFL draft has just completed. We don't get the benefit of a combine or of individual pro days or just having tons of interviews with different people within the game. So, one of the most important things for the draft is actually scouting. Now, in the WWPF, between Frankie and myself, we do big boards, and I think that helps some of the coaches quite a bit with kind of knowing the lay of the land, what's good this year, what's not, and then kind of moving from there. Now, the key with the big boards right now is we're basing it off college and we're basing it off what we see. Um, So, because we just don't know yet, and we won't know up until about, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, when actually scouting goes through. After scouting, we'll have a better idea. The big boards will likely change. They'll hone in a little bit, and that should help a lot of the different coaches. But for right now, what you have is you do have the draft class, but this isn't going to mean a whole hell of a lot. Other than what we're saying in the big boards. And of course, the big boards are based off what came out of SNCFL, which is the Draft Day Sports College Football League here at SimNation, where all the players come out of. But, anyways, I digress. So, I think the first important thing to do right now, because we're still in free agency, is you should have a plan. The plan should be is I'm going to try to go after these people in free agency based on what I see there, and I'm going to go after these people in the draft. And what I'm really saying is you have an idea of what your need is and where you want to get those players from. In Pittsburgh's case, I have a salary cap of 12 million. I'm not playing in free agency that much. I threw out a couple test offers to see if I could snag some really good players at a cheap value. I wasn't able to, so I backed off, and now I'm preparing for the draft because I'm gonna try to fill. I'm gonna try to fill my needs within the draft. So, how do you know what you need? It varies based on what you want to do, where you're going, what your team has. Now, Pittsburgh is pretty stacked. They just won a championship. And I don't have a lot of needs, a lot of dial needs, because I'm pretty set at my starting lineup. But where I want to improve is I want to improve at quarterback. Juan Phillips is up at the end of this year for a new contract. He's 36. I'm likely not going to renew him. Burgess has never quite been the quarterback I wanted him to be, mostly because of intelligence and skill. But he is getting better, so but I don't really see him as a starting quarterback on a recurring basis, and some people are probably thinking I'm on crack right about now. Running back, I'm probably going to pick up a running back in this draft. I picked up one last year on Lackey. I picked up one year before in Arellano. Arellano's contract's coming up. He's asking for a lot of money, and frankly, it's money I'm not willing to pay him based on his stats. Garza and I have a interesting relationship, or I let him go every season, and then or every other season, and then I pick him back up. And he's had a good career for me. I like Garza, which is why I keep bringing him back. But I'm probably going to draft a running back because I need someone to compete with Lackey, and I also need to just have some depth behind Lackey because I run the ball a lot. I don't need a fullback. My offensive line is generally in good shape. Um, Everybody signed the contracts. Everybody's pretty good. Now, Holly, I am going to try to re-sign him for an arm and a leg because he's young. But I may look at tackles this year just because Holly, if he gets a little bit too greedy, I'm probably not going to sign him. Center, I'm going to look at bringing a backup. Valdez is decent, but he's never really developed the way I wanted him to. And frankly, I have no unhappiness with Boone. I'm not looking to replace Boone, but I will probably use like a third or fourth round to go after a center. Tight end, I could improve my tight end area, but I'm not going to. I'm happy generally with what I have here. This is also not the season, I think, to get a tight end. I think there's only like one or two really good ones, and one of them's really a wide receiver. I do need a wide receiver, one because Kruger and Flores are their contracts up at the end of the season. I'm always looking ahead if you haven't figured that out. The other thing is I think that there's some decent wide receivers. I wouldn't be shocked if you see my first or second round pick go to a wide receiver. I think that while this class isn't as deep as last year's was, there are some really good wide receivers in this class, and I'll show you why I think that in a second. I do need a cornerback. One, I need to try to see if I can't get a cornerback who has a speed of 93 or higher. I think that there may be a few in this draft class. If I can't, I just need to get someone who has a speed over 90. The reason why is I try to carry four of them. I have a situation where Flores and Hardaway are starting to get older. Um, and I need to really try to get another one in because Flores is a practice squad player for me for now. I do need a linebacker. You're probably looking at this going, why? And it's just because I carry eight. That's something that I've always done. I'm happy with my linebacker core in general, so I don't need to use a high round draft pick on a linebacker. I do need a defensive tackle. And while I'm set for this season, both Baines and Cosgrove are just getting older. Now, granted, they both are coming off a pretty good year last year, but this is also the year of a defensive tackle draft. So this is going to be one of my best opportunities to get a defensive tackle that can compete with Drake and then inherit the position once Cosgrove and Baines move on. So right now, I think my current plan is I'm probably going to go defensive tackle in the first round because, again, I pick last. Um, I'm not going to do anything with defensive end. It just doesn't make sense to me. Free safety, I may try to upgrade if I think that I can get somebody with a speed of 90 or more, but it's not a burning priority for me. Strong safety and not going to do anything. There's no reason to get rid of Rudd. He's like one of the best punters in the league, and I'm going to leave him alone. Flowers' contract is coming up. This is a year with an intriguing kicker class, by the way. So I may try to draft a kicker later and compete them in the preseason against each other and see who wins out. But Flowers in general has been a really good kicker, so I'm not in a rush to get rid of him. So I'm not going to do that. So if you think about what my needs are, is I want a quarterback, I want a running back, I want a center. I need a wide receiver. Um, I need a cornerback. I need a defensive tackle, and getting an additional linebacker would be nice, and then maybe a speed-free safety. So those are really what my wants and needs are. Now, coaching does play into scouting and assessment. Very important, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. So, generally speaking, once we flip the scouting, all your coaches are going to send you a message saying that these are the sleepers of the draft or people you should really think about. How they are stacked in ratings around scouting and assessment should tell you how much you want to listen to them. Rusty Marin is my defensive coordinator. I'm not going to listen to anything he sends me. He's not good at scouting. He's not good at assessment. He's just not, and it's not worth listening to him. Now, Derek Gonzalez, when he sends me something, I'm going to pay attention to what he has to say, especially in terms of scouting. He's got a 5-star, 4-star in potential. This is a guy who I'm probably going to listen to because he's pretty good at it. Nugent, I'm going to take with a grain of salt when it comes to scouting, but I'm still going to listen to what it is. I mean, I picked Lackey largely based on what he told me last season. Um, so, and I'll show you what that means in a second. But assess potential, I'm definitely going to listen to him. In scouting, I'm going to kind of listen to him, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Same thing with Bennett. Uh, Bennett, I'm going to listen to a lot about potential and ability because he's really good at both. That's why I keep him, of course. And then, of course, scouting, I'm not really going to listen to him. So know your coaches that know who is actually good at what, because once you start getting those emails, it's going to tell you who you should be listening to. Also, as you interview people, And as you scout them, your coaches are going to give them a rating. If the guy really sucks at scouting and assessing potential, he may give them like a 30, and you'll be like, this is the greatest guy since sliced bread. But then you look at Nugent, who actually knows what he's talking about, and maybe Nugent only gives him a 15. Um, and you want to say, okay, I trust Nugent more than I trust Mirren, and I'm just going to listen to Nugent. So make sure you understand your coaches. Um, for the draft right now, again, we haven't scouted, so the only people who are showing up with scout marks right now are the top 10. Um, so what I'm going to look at is my need, and then I'm going to look at a couple other things. So let's start with quarterback. So the quick thing I do here is I figure out what I care about. In my case, I'm an ARM system, so I'm going to look at these and I'm going to go, okay, if they have at least two A's through C's in the categories that matter, like arm and accuracy, I'm going to probably scout them. Interviewing, so scout changes this, it'll fill in this, interviewing fills in this. So what I'm looking here is uh, I I don't need to worry about scouting Witten. He's in the top 10. I don't need to scout him. I am going to scout Antonio because I know what he did in college, and I don't believe these ratings are correct for him. So I'm probably going to scout him. But what I'll also do is I'll just kind of filter through. Again, nothing's going to populate here because scouting hasn't happened. But then I'm going to look here and say, okay, 40, don't really kill, don't really kill. And I'm going to look at his Wonderlic. And I do like that they added this, by the way. This makes sense. I think these two are known as smart quarterbacks, so is Sparks. I don't think Antonio's that stupid. I mean, he is from one of Skelter's teams, but no, I don't. I wouldn't say that. I think that's accurate. But so I'm going to scout him because he has an A arm. That's the main reason. So he doesn't fit the two rule that I just told you about. But the fact is I normally scout anyone who has an A arm. Feldor does meet it because he has an A and a C. I'm gonna scout him. Fulcher, I'm definitely gonna scout, but for a different reason, and I'll talk about that in a future video. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip over to accuracy because I do need a quarterback. Sparks has two A's, so I'm gonna go after him and try to scout him. I'm gonna scout Shaw because again he has two A's. I'll probably scout Mitchell because he has two C's. And I really don't pay attention to the projection. Projection at most will just help guide me with what round I think I want to go in. If we look at running back, I am a speed guy through and through. So I like the fact that he has a B, A, so I would scout him. I would scout Coburn again because A through C, if you have it in multiple categories, I am going to look at you. Britt Buckley is another guy to look at. So I'm writing all this down and thinking about it. Then when I go to cornerback, again, looking at speed, these are guys who I'm going to write down. There's a lot of A's, as you can see, which is why I think that this is going to be a fairly deep class, but I would say that there's a cautionary tale here based on what I saw out of college in the big board. That I don't think that there are this many burners. People ask all this time, what does an A mean? What does a B mean? What does a C mean? What does a D, F? It generally, right now, it doesn't mean anything because there's been no scouting done. So you don't know if this is the media saying this. You haven't had a chance to actually look at them and see whether or not those ratings are actually true or not. But generally speaking, an A is the average. The grades are based against the average of the position. I've said this in a couple different videos, especially in college, is you can go back to your roster and actually do a quick average of, let's just look at cornerback. And let's just say that I have a faster secondary than a lot of teams, but not all teams. So for me, average speed is somewhere around 85, 86. So if I think about that, an A would mean that the person's probably in the mid 80s to the 90s. A B is probably mid 80s to maybe like mid 70s, a C is probably 70s, a D is probably 60s, and an F probably means 50s. Now, again, I'm going to keep harping on this, is no scouting has happened, so you don't know whether that's true or not until you actually do the scout, whether this A is actually an A or whether this A is really a C or a B. Just like in terms of arm, an A could mean a 90, it could also mean an 80. A B could mean an 80, it could also mean a 70. So again, it's against the average and it's a range within there. So that range is always moving. So just because last year an A may have meant a 90 doesn't mean it's going to mean a 90 this year. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing this. But what you're really trying to do here is draft up a list of everybody who you're going to scout, who you're going to interview. I would say be very liberal and try to get as many people as you can. And then try to, whether they're round 1, round 4, undrafted, go after the people who you think that you should go after. Now, I am going to do a video around a big board, but generally speaking, I think scouting will start on Wednesday, be done by Thursday, because the draft for us is going to be this Friday or Saturday. Probably leaning now towards Saturday because I am going to likely be out on Friday. But that's how to scout. Hopefully you find this video informative. I'm going to do a quick one about the big board here in a second, but generally you should assess your need, see, you should have had a plan about what you were doing in free agency or not, and then pull out the positions that you're going to get through free agency versus the ones you're going to draft. Look at your staff to get an idea of who you want to listen to throughout this process, and then look at the draft class itself and then start jotting down who you want to scout, who you want to interview, so that way when it comes time you can just do that, and then you can hone in based on that on what your actual draft list is going to be. So that's it for now. Hopefully this video helped you, and I will talk to you later.